Somewhere in the middle of the two extremes lies a world of open discourse. Probing the depths of the in-between. Welcome to Gray Matters Radio with your host, Michael Devine.
Good evening. Welcome to Gray Matters Radio. Another installment. Somehow I'm still on the air. I'm still trying to figure that one out actually right now. But welcome to Gray Matters Radio. In case this is the first time you've actually come to this show, what is Gray Matters? Well, Gray Matters Radio is a show that operates somewhere in the world of the in-between. What is actually this in-between that you ask? Well, unless you've been sleeping underneath a rock for your whole life, we actually have these two things called political parties. And this show lies, in the gray area in between both of them. Crazy idea, I know, but actually for me, I'm kind of colorblind. So I couldn't really identify a political party color even if I really wanted to. So I figured, why not bring more people into the gray with me? So really, I'm not alone. I'm kind of a needy, kind of anxious guy. So I kind of need a lot more people with me. So I am your host, Michael Devine, your tour guide of the gray per se. You're probably asking, so what actually qualifies me to guide you on this journey? I'm a counselor. I'm a counselor with a conscience. I'm a man who's been tasked with saving the world one person, one family, at a time. And I kind of saw the world going to hell in a handbasket and kind of felt guilty about it. I felt like I couldn't just sit back and collect my hourly wage anymore, and decided that I had to take my brand of therapy and bring it to the world. Try to change the world. I know it's kind of arrogant, kind of narcissistic, but I just had to kind of do it. So joining me on this nebulous journey is the opinionated veteran, Ron. Ron, how you doing this evening?
Hey, Mike. Doing very well. I'm happy to be here in the gray zone with you.
I know, it is a little gray. It sounds kind of sad. It sounds like we're almost in Seattle or something, but we're not. We're technically in this nebulous area of the gray, different locations.
That's right.
Disembodied people listening to us. And why are they listening to us? I don't know. I think they're listening to us because maybe they feel the same way that we do, that maybe there's some things really wrong in the world, and it doesn't really matter for Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, somewhere in the middle, that we all maybe see that we have to do something different. And so apparently birds of a feather flock together, don't we?
I think so. I think they're just like the rest of us, just trying to do the best we can every day and, take care of family and friends and do what's right and figure things out as we go along.
We try to. What's a little crazy, though, it's been a little bit of a weird kind of week in the news. I mean, I don't know if you pay much attention to the news, but apparently it seems a little crazy out there, between Michael Cohen basically straight up coming out and saying, like, yeah, I lied. I knew I was lying, and frankly, I didn't really care that I did, and I was put up to it. And then, I don't know, Trump told a bunch of different kind of lies. He kind of went back and forth on it. And so if you talk to Democrats, it's like, oh, he's literally going to be, impeached tomorrow. You talk to Republicans.
Oh, I know. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi were going at it with him in the office, and it's kind of crazy.
I know. I saw that too, and I was just like, geez, this is not normal. It was videotaped. That was the craziest thing. It was on video, them fighting with each other. Basically, there was all kinds of innuendos. Total disrespect for it. It feels like we're in the Twilight Zone. You've always been.
You got to wonder that if they're going to do that with cameras on, what is it like behind closed doors? But I really wish they would have just continued. We have these open discussions, and when Chuck Schumer kind of said, we'll just continue this discussion behind closed doors, I'm like, no, Chuck, let's just. But that's my personal opinion.
That's the crazy thing, is that you're absolutely right, that if this is what they're showing, what the hell? Because you always heard stories, right? We've always heard like random stories about things that were done, things that were said, but never, ever have we ever seen it out there for everybody. And
you'll find some sort of aide or somebody that had an ear to the door outside these meetings, kind of leak something and it'll get out. But you rarely see what you saw on TV the other day.
And the thing is, it's like. Really, what was this all over? If we're really being honest, it was about his border wall. Trump made a promise, right?
Yep.
He made a promise in the beginning
Yep.
Of his election that I'm going to build a big border wall. Okay, now this tonight's show is not going to be about debating necessarily about funding for a border wall. I mean, that's probably, frankly, it's a different show, and I don't want to get into that. I mean, we have other shows that we can go into on that one, but it's about the idea of that he thinks a border wall is so important to the national security of our country that he is basically willing to shut down the government where everyone's willing to fight. And the thing is, remember when he set up, Mexico's going to pay for it. Obviously, they're not going to pay for it, but he feels as though it's so important that, okay, we have to pay for this ourselves. So now when you hear that, Ron, now you're a military guy, all right? So you obviously know what danger really is, right? You've been there. You've been with men and women who serve doing that. I haven't. I'm a son of a veteran. I'm a big student of military history, but I'm not going to pretend to know what that really is like being in danger. So if you say you're scared of something, I'm going to sit there and go, all right, I should probably be afraid of that. And so when you hear the emphasis on this border wall, are you sitting there going, "Oh wow, that this is a really big deal? Like we're fucked. I mean, we're gonna die tomorrow unless we do this." I mean, so as a military guy, what are you scared by this? Do you think we're missing something? I mean, do you know something that I don't know? I mean,
the short answer is no. I'm not overly concerned. Do I think we need to have robust border security? Absolutely. Are there sections of the wall that need to be replaced and enhanced? Absolutely. Are there places that we need to build the wall where it doesn't exist? Absolutely. Are there places that you just geographically, due to terrain, cannot build a wall? That is true. I think the wall is just part of a broad border security approach, which includes physical barriers, which includes human, which includes signal intelligence, which includes drones, which includes sensors. It's a part of an entire package. It's going to solve all the problems. It's going to solve some of the problems in certain areas. But think if you just had a wall that went from one end to the other, they would just wind up going afloat like the Cubans and Haitians did back in '94. They're just like, well, we'll just head to the water and head to Florida, or we'll head to, another section of Texas or something. So, while I think the wall is important, it's certainly not the end all, the be all, and I think it's more media hype. I also think conservatives and Republicans place more emphasis or concern on the wall due to psychological differences that we discussed before, meaning that they respond more to fear politics, and that liberals are less concerned about the wall. But somewhere between, hey, let's just unlock the gate, open it up and allow everybody in, and let's just shut everything down, to me is the common sense area. We just haven't gotten there yet.
And that's the thing is, like, as you speak that, it's like, it makes total sense. Like, what you just said is exactly like, no, it's a combination of everything. It's not the worst case scenario, but we also just can't be bleeding hearts and just have Swiss cheese and let everybody in. It's a middle ground approach, but we can talk all day long about the politics of it, right? I mean, everyone does rhetoric for a reason, right? We've talked on previous shows how really with social media and 24-hour news, it's been mainlined into people's psyche, so that's why maybe it's having a different effect than it's had in the past. But I think, to me, there's a much bigger effect that it's basically kind of having on absolutely everything. And this was really what's scaring the crap out of me. So if we really kind of think about it, all right, if you really look at the immigration issue, you'd probably then go, okay, well, why is this such a big deal? We should be able to look up data, right? And you and I are data junkies, right? So there's no data that's going to get beyond
We
it.
are.
So I was like, all right, well, let's look at some data, right? Real research, okay?
Oh, we were talking about the border wall, and reminded me of a Pew research that came out recently where it said, but the headline in all the news was "Americans do not want the wall." It's and every news media, ABC, NBC, CBS, everybody says that the the poll said that Americans do not want the wall. But if you read the poll, what the question says is, do you favor building a complete wall from end to end? And, gave you your typical, spread, I highly agree, I agree, I don't agree, I disagree. But the problem is the news only reported that Americans did not want the wall. But what the research said, or the question was, do you want the wall built end to end? So, again, somewhere in there it gets a little skewed if you have a inadequate survey question, or the news doesn't report what was actually said in the question and gives the misinterpretation of the data.
And that's the thing. And you can interpret data a lot of different ways. And that's where I think it gets dangerous with the media, where I think people can, let's be honest, people can really do a good job of, if you don't understand research, you can really present it in one way. And I think that's the thing that what we're trying not to do on our shows is, do it at an angle. Let's actually look at it from both ways, right? So one of the data that I was looking at was, okay, well, if immigrants are so dangerous, right, we're talking about crime, right? So I went and actually looked at the crime statistics, and this was actually backed up by 3 different studies done at 3 different times by 3 different institutes. And what's interesting is that when we look at all crimes, and we look at, so they usually measure it in per capita, so per 100,000 people. And so what's interesting, you look at all crime committed by everyone in the United States as of 2015, of 1,750 per 100,000 was committed by native-born Americans. Undocumented was roughly 750 per 100,000. And just legal immigrants, ones who have legally come to the country, was somewhere around 220 per. Now, one thing you'd have to look at, though, and then this is where I think they're presenting the data very selectively. If you look at homicide is, so for native-born, it's a little bit closer, actually. So native-born, it is about 3.9 per 100,000. And then for undocumented, it's about 2.9. And then for legal immigrants, it's about 0.25. So it got a lot closer, basically. But once again, it's still where we're seeing native born. Now, I think a lot of people would go, well, it's the concentration of immigrants, because there's still a lot more native born. Well, then, so look that one up even. So if that were technically true, the more people, the more immigrants that came into the country, we technically should see more of a concentration of crime among them. So kind of just accounting for that. But here's an interesting thing, and you can look at this once again. This is actually published in the journal Criminology. If you look at over the last, from 1990 to 2015, they measured the illegal immigrant crime rate, and then he looked at the share of the population. Now, by theory, if all these people were bad hombres, as President Trump said, technically we should see what, Ron? The crime rate going up the more they've come in, right? Actually gone down. It's the opposite. It's what we call a negative correlation. The more undocumented illegal immigrants and legal immigrants have come into the country, it is a perfectly straight negative line going down, meaning that the violent crime rate has gone down the more of them that have come in. Exactly. Yeah. And so that's when we start kind of looking at, okay, is it what's reported? And that's where it gets really interesting. And now, are you finding?
What they'll do is they'll skew the data. But go ahead.
No, I was actually going to ask you, like, do you see it any differently? Because I want to do a check and balance here. I want to make sure once and for all that, okay, I'm not lying about this. And so, is there another interpretation of the data that what I just basically said? Is there any other way of looking at it that, okay, the more people that are coming in, it doesn't really seem to be a big correlation with the danger that it's being presented?
No, the data is the data, and your summary of the data is accurate. You should see a corresponding spike with times with an increase in immigration. But, one of the problems I see, and again, when we talk about the big C word, which is compromise, is everybody on the right says, all illegals are degenerate, MS-13, drug dealing, people. And then everybody on the left says, oh, they're all just grandmas and mummies, bringing their kids to better themselves in the United States. When the reality is it's somewhere in the middle. And we just need to vet these people for a number of reasons, and which includes health. Maybe they have medical needs that need to be attended to immediately, never mind terrorism and other things, but, it's their health and it's vaccines and it's diseases and it's drugs, it's human trafficking and it's gangs and it's guns and it's counterfeit materials, and the list goes on and on and on. But, as a nation, as a sovereign nation, we have a right to, secure our borders and decide who comes in, and we just need to have the right checks and balances to make sure people are properly vetted. And that's what's been causing problems at the border.
And that is exactly an amazing point. It's like, it's not that it's not an issue. And I think what I'm arguing, what we're basically presenting is that, okay, yes, it is an issue, but the dire nature, and think about it, this argument is sucking out the oxygen out of the room. I mean, think about it. I mean, what are the biggest ones we hear? Border wall, we hear globalism, we hear terrorism, but it's like, these are all hypotheticals, and everything is about, we got to do something about it, and it's polarizing, sucks all the air out of the room. We don't talk about anything else. And on top of that, it creates more polarization. We can't get anything done. And this is where, as a clinician, and I'm curious to hear what military families are talking about, because when I have people in my office, if you're to ask me, hey, Mike, what is it that your clients are worried about? The things I hear are, I worry about my son or daughter with drug abuse, bullying, suicide, failure to launch is a big thing. I work with that. They're going to make it through college and they're going to be okay. I hear them sometimes worry about finances and debt. So now, that's what I'm seeing with my clients. Now, I know you and I work kind of similarly with people, but we also work a little bit differently. So what are you hearing among military families? Are you hearing different concerns?
No, yeah, I mean, people aren't in the military. They're not concerned about the border per se. They're worried about maybe their sons and daughters that are at the border. But the military is just a microcosm of society. We worry about average, everyday things. Just for some examples, spouses in the military worry about things like identity theft, because that's a problem today. They worry about having careers and money, and about perceptions and being alone with their, significant others being deployed. So that they have everyday worries. Active duty people are worried about, geez, I got to get up at 5:30 in the morning to go to physical training and formation, or I got to worry about deployment coming up, or I got to be out in the field this weekend, and my wife's sick, and those are the things that they worry about, not so much about the wall. Pay raises also.
Of course, yeah. And honestly, there seems like there's similar kind of things, right? And so then I was like, all right, I'm going to do some research on the things that I'm seeing in my office, and then looking at the cost or the damage or the lives being affected by that. And so I hear a lot on suicide, just being in a mental health profession. And these are these are statistics that came out last year. I think they're still calculating to 2017, but I know they're saying it's already trended above. But think about this. According to the CDC, 2016 alone, age 10 and older, 46,000 Americans committed suicide. That's 10 and older, and it's trending higher for 2017. And that's not even including the under 10 that we've seen a lot with these bullying cases, which we'll be talking a lot about this weekend on the Voice of the Radical Center, which we'll be literally talking a lot about bullying, how it affects people.
We're going to have a whole special on that. We got a great guest, so I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, this is something near and dear to me. I got my practice started on how bullying affects the brain and how it affects us. And I was somebody that was, I was bullied when I was younger. I was a bit of a chubby kid, and that's something that even to this day, it still affects me in certain in certain ways. I know, like on Facebook, I can still see certain people that said pretty mean things to me, and I'm not gonna lie. If I saw some of those people today, I'd probably just punch them in the nuts. Like, and it's been that many years. My wife, she grew up in a time when it was actually bad to be too skinny. Think about that, right? And even to this day, that's something that incredibly affects her body image. And I mean, none of us would go to our high school reunions because people were dicks. And so, and my bullying, the bullying that we got just messed us up, maybe body image wise. But the bullying that kids are going through now, I mean, so this is what parents worry about. I mean, that's a lot of suicides. And that's not that. So think about this: drug use, drug abuse. This is a big one. This is a big thing I see in my office. I mean, I literally do drug abuse counseling. Get a load of this. 2017. If you had to guess, how many million Americans do you think have age 12 and older struggling with addiction? What would you guess?
Struggling with a drug addiction?
A drug addiction. Yeah, addiction in general. 12 and above. What would you guess?
I'd probably throw out 28% of the population.
Yeah, that's actually pretty damn good. That's probably a little bit slightly higher. 21.5 million Americans age 12 or older. Think about that for a second. 21.5 million people are struggling with addiction in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Last year alone,
and I'm sure that could be tobacco and alcohol, prescription drugs,
sexual addiction. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
We're going to do another.
Tide Pods. Can't forget Tide Pods.
Oh, Tide Pods. But what's crazy?
Can't forget Tide Pods.
How can we forget Tide Pods? My God.
I know.
But
that's the next generation people right there.
Well, one of the things that we're actually going to do another show on this one here in the next month or so about sex addiction, and it's almost like the redheaded stepchild of addiction. I mean, think about on the news how many teachers have had their lives ruined in jail, marriages, they totally scar young kids due to that. How many priests and pastors, how many CEOs, movie moguls, people's lives destroyed due to sex.
Especially this past year with the Me Too movement.
Oh, God. This is something I know near and dear with sex trafficking and sex crimes. We talk a lot about the victims, but one of the things that if you talk to a lot of police officers, like I'm sure you have, a lot of these men that are taking advantage of these young women, they're businessmen, they're dads, wealthy individuals, and because of their addiction, just like with a lot of drug addiction, the cartels are taking advantage of the demand. And if there was no demand for these girls, the sex trafficking wouldn't be happening. And think about it. You have a dad who has probably 3 kids at home and has a total disconnect in between his own children, and this is somebody else's daughter. And so sex addiction, I mean, addiction is ravaging this country, right? Destroying so many lives. Last year alone, CDC reported 72,000 deaths due to drug overdoses. I mean, think about that. And this problem isn't just drug addiction. It's not just suicide. Let's talk about gun deaths. Now, I don't want this to be a debate about guns, right? Because I look at there were deaths.
Most of the suicide deaths are from guns.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And I look at gun deaths alone, 40,000 people. And once again, it's not about. I don't want this to be a debate. That'll be another show we have to get into. We don't have to do a joint show. We can do a joint show of the opinion of a veteran Gray Matters on that one. But the way I look at it,
we could.
They were probably going to do that anyway. But it's like, so think about it. So going back to our original numbers of how many people are really being murdered and killed by immigrants. Heck, let's do terrorism, right? I mean, if you go on the news, terrorism is a thing that's just going to kill every single one of us killed due to terrorist attacks since 9/11. If you had to guess, like how many people were killed due to terrorist attacks, how many would you guess?
Oh, well, but less than 3,000 probably, or I'd say less than 5,000 in the United States since 2001.
If you look at the data, about really, how many people have actually been killed in attacks? If you look at it, was like radical jihadists, it was like 108.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. 109. I'm sorry. Since 9/11, 119 people have been killed due to radical Islamists. 106 have been killed by far-right radicals. And then it was something like 8 was black militants, and then they had another one, 6, like misogyny. I don't know what that is, like somebody killing someone. I think due to like abortion doctors.
Well,
maybe.
They don't like to hear it, but the white radical right has killed more people than just about anybody else in those categories of crimes or cases.
And that's the thing. So, like, if we were to start adding up numbers here, so we look at 46,000. I mean, I'm gonna get my calculator out here, and I got to do calculator because I'm not really that good at math. So I'm gonna add this up here. Right, so we got 46,000. That's the number of suicides. We have 72,000 due to drug overdoses. Now, the gun violence one is tough because how many of those, we'd have to really dive into the numbers. But just alone, in 1 year, we've had 118,000 Americans killed due to drug abuse, suicide, and a lot of times they're all interconnected with each other. Now, you tell me, what is the biggest threat in this country? Is it immigrants coming into this country? Is it terrorism? Or is it something about our society that is making so many young individuals use drugs, be depressed? And we're not even getting we'd have to do a whole show. We'd have to bring in literally to have one of our interns almost do statistics on other negative causes like failure to launch, just pure depression, all those costs. I mean, geez, I mean, that would be even worse, right? But I mean.
Honestly, and I'd probably even say something that's much simpler than that is something as simple as food accessibility, for lower income people.
Oh, gosh.
That's what people are worried about. The average everyday person is worried about income and food and car payments and gas and taxes. And
well, think about on Sesame Street, they haven't the access to food is such a big deal. They have a new character now whose family doesn't have access to regular food.
Do they really?
Yeah, that's a brand new character that's going to be on Sesame Street.
Wow.
Yeah,
actually, that's kind of cool.
It
My
is.
kids are older, so I don't. So I'd look silly if I still watched it. but I'm going to check it out now.
Oh, absolutely! Yeah, it's really. I think it's really telling. And so when I hear this, oh no, what do you say?
Not to go backwards in the conversation, but you said something earlier that made me think of some things that have happened in my career, and I'm a retired special agent from the Department of the Army, but you said something about where if people did not commit suicide by guns, they would do it in another way, and that is absolutely correct. When the Army tried tackling the suicide rate of active duty Army. I was once asked by the senior Army leadership, how do we get our hands around this? And I'm like, you don't. All you can do is, again, mine's a biased perspective. But I said, you tackle it through caring leadership and through caring about people. But I've had a number of cases where, guns weren't accessible and they just committed suicide using whatever means. One guy shoved 6 Skillcraft pencils through his temple.
Oh, God.
I had another one that went into a motor pool. That's where all these tactical vehicles are parked. Jury-rigged a military-style front-end loader, laid down on the ground and let the front-end loader blade crush his head. Not to get disgusting or dark, but that underscores the point.
Exactly. And think about how many of those drug overdoses were then them slowly killing themselves with that. I mean, and that's the... Gosh, there's food. And this is where it starts getting mind-boggling. Of, one of the things, and I say this, and I don't say it lightheartedly or say it, for hyperbole. I really do feel like, as a clinician, whether it be addiction, whether it be like really bad suicide, depression type of issues, especially when they're the environments that they're in, but even when the environments aren't that bad, I almost feel like I'm a counselor working with a soldier for PTSD, and literally at the end of the session, they're going back into the battlefield, and then I see them next week after they've been in battle all week, and that's what I feel like I'm doing. And of course, what we're doing is it's like mental health super glue. that the best that we're going to be able to do is just somewhat hold people together, which to me, that's the, because I think one of the reasons why we're not screaming from the rooftops is because we have our politicians and our organizations. We're going to spend $1 billion on this prevention. We're going to spend $500 million on this. But the reality is, we keep spending more and more money. We keep creating more awareness, and what happens? The numbers go up. We have celebrities who have everything. I mean, Anthony Bourdain is one of the biggest influences on my life as a writer, someone in the media, and just all around just love of food and travel and culture. Had literally everything, and that wasn't even enough.
Well, even in the military, when you talk about high-ranking people, Admiral Borda many years ago, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, committed suicide because he was embarrassed somebody found out he was wearing the wrong ribbon. And then we had a Navy admiral committed suicide in Bahrain.
Yeah. I know that people said
we don't know the details of that yet. But.
Exactly, but you're absolutely right. I immediately thought about that. It's like we have to start asking ourselves as a society, it's that when we're spending more and more money on a problem and it doesn't get any better, to me, it's almost like flapping your arms harder and thinking you're going to fly. And it's like, what we're doing isn't working. And to me, just because we need to have an honest conversation with ourselves that money isn't the answer. And because everyone is worried about it, but yet we allow ourselves to get distracted with all the political crap. And it's like, why are we not talking about this when we have this many people, for fact, 100% this many people are dying? This isn't hyperbole. This isn't a speculation. No, this is what's happening every day. Why are we not caring about it? Or why is it the news isn't covering this on headlines? Why are we covering hypothetical things that might happen more? Maybe you have an understanding of it, but I'm trying to wrap my head around why more people like me are just so flabbergasted with this. So I just don't understand, why is it that this is not on the front page of the newspaper? Why is this not the headline every single day? Why is it we don't have, instead of having experts analyzing whether or not Trump is a narcissist, or if Nancy Pelosi or Hillary Clinton has like Alzheimer's or something, why are we not talking about what is it about society that is making so many people run to addiction? What is it that we have to change? Maybe but I'm still trying to figure it out.
Well, part of it is we haven't made it really truly a national priority. We talk about it. We've got a suicide prevention month, but I'm sure there's an addiction month out there. But we just don't make it a national priority where we talk about suicide, and we don't make it easy for people to talk about suicide. And you know better than I do about why people do and don't talk about suicide. There's probably some disclosure issues. There's some embarrassment issues. I don't know. People might be afraid of being locked up and, put a 24-hour hold for evaluation or something, or how it might affect their job, or, getting a gun or whatever else. But we just don't make it a national priority. And I think if we probably get a handle on it like we do everything else when we make it a national priority.
I've thought about that a lot. It was after my first book was published, and I was like, okay, this is something that I think, I basically looked at like we the people, we the problem, that it's society in and of itself that's creating it. If you really look at addiction and really, I mean, suicide, it's a coping strategy to escape away from the world that you're living in. And when we see so many people across every major socioeconomic status, every walk of life, every level of success, it's affecting almost everyone equally. Now, I think lower SES, it affects them probably more just because of the hardships, but it's affecting everybody. I mean, if we're using a metaphor of like baking bread, if the bread keeps coming out burnt, are we going to keep investing in better knives to cut off the burnt edges? Are we going to, put better icing on it so you can't even really see the burnt? Are we going to try to maybe tell people, actually, no, a burnt is actually better. It's like you just don't get it, right? Or are we going to sit
So
there?
do you like your toast lightly brown, crispy brown,
extra brown? It's extra bitter.
Extra brown.
It's
That's
refined.
Right.
It's French, right?
That's
but
right.
or are we going to sit there and go, you know what? Maybe the oven the bread is baking in is the problem. Maybe the person baking the bread is a problem. Maybe the ingredients going into the bread is the problem. And that's the thing.
Well, it's the ingredients. It's the ingredients. I mean, there's so many factors that contribute to suicide. Why people commit suicide could be, relation problem. Could be substance abuse. Could be they lost a job or their financial problems. Maybe they lost their house. Maybe they just got diagnosed with something that was incurable. Or maybe there was an immediate crisis and they lacked the resilience and the coping skills to handle it. I mean, there's so many different factors that contribute to why people commit suicide.
And that's where it's like, it's such a complicated problem, and yet it requires it is a national emergency. It requires everybody to be talking about it. We need news people, the anchors. That's the stuff that we need to be analyzing and discussing and talking about. But we're not, because
suicides cost the nation, cost society about $70 billion a year in combined medical and work loss costs. So I mean, there is a cost associated with that. Whether it's the medical treatment, emergency response and all that other stuff, or the lost productivity. Never mind the loss of the person himself and the impact on a family, which is more important than any of the aforementioned. But it costs society both personally and financially.
Oh, I mean, with drug abuse, the opiate epidemic, just since 2014, it's been $500 billion, and by 2020, it's going to be $1 trillion. So now, as a libertarian, somebody who's about fiscal responsibility, why is it we're talking about cutting granny off at the knees and cutting food stamps and all these stupid programs that really only going to account for less than 1% of our budget? And why are we not talking about this? And once again,
exactly.
And
this is where the money needs to go too. I think I did some numbers, and what do we talk about? Those social programs that people talk about taking away to save money is only 3 cents on the dollar. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, and you're talking about taking away something from the most fragile people in society, many of whom had no choice into being where they're at. And that's where our compassion as a nation and Christians, if you're a Christian, come in to take care of those people. So, but we definitely need to be putting money and resources at the community level, and in schools to help people. But another thing I found out that was interesting is 54% of those that commit suicide did not have a known mental condition. So that doesn't mean that it means that you don't have to be suffering from depression. You don't have to be having some sort of mental health issue. Something could happen where you're just in crisis, and the only way out that you have or feel that you have is through suicide. It's crazy.
No, exactly, and it's and this is what's crazy to me as a clinician, where once again, why is it that we are the only ones having this discussion? And I think we have it amongst ourselves. I think we have it in the therapy office. I think you have it with the veterans and the families, but we all need to be having this. Drug abuse and suicide, it is affecting absolutely everyone. And it is an emergency that is real, and it's happening now. And I think, if anything, we need to demand that our politicians and our leaders start talking about, because I think the truth of the matter is, and maybe I'm a cynic, maybe, it's weird. A therapist, usually we're all about being all like, kumbaya-ish and hopeful, but I'm a little bitter. I'm a little cynical. And I really think society realizes, as a country, everybody, I mean, it goes across the world. I mean, this even getting into mass shootings and whatever, I think we don't want to change. I think the change that we need to make as a society would make us all so uncomfortable, would require such a radical way of life that would really being honest, it really would require a shift of what we spend our money and how. and it's a shift that can't happen. It can't happen quickly. It has to be something that's slow. And I think we don't want it. That's my opinion. I don't think we want to see that. And I think the powers that be kind of understand it. And we talked about in the past shows of the effect of psychological operations, basically psychology being used to stoke up emotions and seeing the negative side effects. They know that it's about power, and I think the powers that be know it. I think they're trying to get away with it. Much like it's like I'm a big race car fan, and if you're anyone who's a race fan listening, and that you'll push that engine, especially during like Indy or the big race, you'll push it and get all that horsepower until it blows, and then you realize, oh, we pushed it too far. But the problem is, as society, we don't have the ability to push it, and it's broken because it's real lives, and if we break it, we're not coming back from it. And at what point do we need our leaders to be the ones that go, all right, wait a minute, time out here. We need to start talking about change. It's going to take many, many, many years because we do need to shift things. We need to change things a little bit. And there's going to be people that are going to win, people are going to lose, and we're all going to lose if we don't change. And if we have a realistic talk about it, because the second you start talking about it, you're going to be a communist, you're a socialist, you're an whatever it is.
Well, I think there's a mechanism there, because I think a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, we were running some numbers with a friend of ours talking about access to mental health, and what was it? There was 3 counselors for every 100,000 in England, and there was 33 or 34 counselors, including psychologists and mental health professionals, per 100,000 in the United States.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's still probably not even enough. I don't know, but we need to create an environment where people that need help can do it in a confidential manner that is not going to adversely impact their life. And do so at an effective cost rate. I mean, I think I was even looking at becoming a licensed clinical social worker at one time, and looking at how much people charge per hours, and I think psychologist around here in Texas is about $250 an hour just to go talk to them, cash out of pocket.
It depends.
License.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big rate. I mean, I know I charge about $150 an hour, and I allow people to get out of network, reimbursement. But you have some people charging a lot, and I think the bigger issue is, and this is the sad thing, is that there's, and I'm going to do a whole other show on this one, on just the egregious greediness of the mental health industry. I think as individual clinicians, I think we're in line with a lot, especially people like myself, where if the people can afford it, they'll do the cash rate, but then we'll still work with people to help them out. And you and I have talked about trying to work with congressmen to go, hey, listen, I have a lot of student loans. I'll see veterans for free.
I still think that's an awesome.
Yeah,
I think that's an awesome benefit.
I know we totally need to really hit on that. And so, I think it's not the outpatient. I think the reality is that, do you realize, aside from 3 to 5 day acute inpatient care that mental hospitals that insurance will pay for, there is no real residential long-term treatment for mental health. It is if you're rich. You have places charging $45,000, $60,000 for a 45, 60-day program. Substance abuse, a lot of times it's the same thing. They'll pay for 30, but here's the funny thing. You have to basically fail out of outpatient and acute inpatient multiple times before they'll pay for it. They'll give you 30 days, but the research says 30 days doesn't even work. And then really, residential treatment is really just a start. It's the aftercare, and then that's where you get the other profiteering. You have a lot of ex-addicts that are starting their own sober living homes. They're charging $2,000-$3,000 a month for up to a year, and then the reality is that the best care, it only goes to the 1%. So if you're rich, well, they can afford it. There's such a shortage of psychiatrists in this country. Most of them don't take insurance, so even getting good, decent psychiatric health care, it is just it's a greed show, and so no one can get the help that they need. So I 100% agree, but there needs to be a very real reality of people in my industry need to really start speaking up, because I'm sick of finding really good programs for clients, only to have my clients say, I can't afford it. And I have clients that, they probably make a combined $500,000 and they can't afford it. Who can then? But then here's the kicker,
Well,
though.
and it gets very pricey. It gets very, very pricey. I mean, and even I took a knee. That's what we talk about in the military, to say, hey, I need to take a break, and I need to go talk to somebody. But I didn't do it on through the military. I went off post, pay it out of my own pocket because I didn't want the military to know, because I was worried about my security clearance. And then it wasn't until President Bush signed a law that says, yeah, you can disclose having mental health counseling and no adverse effect on your security clearance. So that's just one example about how, what people think about before going and getting mental health. I was worried about my security clearance.
And that's what's really even crazy is that I learned that when I was doing community mental health care. It was really cool. We did a lot of Medicaid. We had a Medicaid contract, so the police were the ones that called us out to do the psych assessments. And the crazy thing was that we got a lot of veterans the calls that we went out onto. And one of the girls that that was working with one of my partners, she was a veteran, and I don't know how many times. When we asked them about the care they were getting, and they're like, well, I don't want to go to the VA. I want to stay as far away as I can from it, but I can't afford it. And there's not a lot.
Yeah.
It's called TRICARE. It's an insurance that military families have, and a lot of clinicians don't even have it. A lot of us don't even really know even how to get on their rolls. So it's
right.
There's
well, and I've had some veteran friends of mine, talk to me because, veterans talk to each other before they talk to anybody else. But, they're worried about, well, geez, maybe I got a disability rating for PTSD and I need help. But if I go to the VA and I get fixed, then I'm going to lose my disability rating in that part of my pension, and I can't afford that. But again, it gets back to that, real life stuff about, being able to provide for you and your family, put food on the table, pay the bills,
Yeah, and it's just... And you just even see where there's the upstream problem, there's the downstream problem, and both of them are just complete shit shows. And we need to make it to where until we can have that bigger, because I think Democrats, one of the biggest problems is that there's so much about the bigger picture and societal changes, and they get so focused on changing everything now that they don't realize change takes a while. And you can't change everything. It's going to scare the crap out of people, and all it's going to do is trigger things. I think on the conservative kind of Republican side, it's very much about the here and now. This is about the here and now. Let's just focus on that. And it's like, no, we can do both. This is a country that used to be able to do so much. Fight multiple fronts of wars. Send men to the moon. We used to be able to do all that. And I find it hard to believe.
What you see is when you see the leadership of the United States, the president, Congress, say something as a national priority and rally around it, we solve problems. But when you have all this partisan bickering going apart, you're not going to have that rallying cry.
And that's the thing. And that's exactly what we need. If every single one of them were to get up going, listen, I've had a family member affected by this. I am concerned with this. Everybody knows someone. And this is even getting into the autism crisis. I'm going to do a show on that one. I think that'll be my Monday show. Going over just the autism treatment, the autism epidemic, and how the hardship those families are going through. It's just, we got so many problems that are affecting so many people in the here and now, and everyone's talking about, but yet we're so distracted with the BS, and that's all that it is. I think.
And I tell my friends this, that get all worked up about the news. I said, just close your eyes. Just close your eyes. Turn off the TV. Turn off social media. Look to your left, look at your kids, look to your right, look at your spouse, and is your world truly falling apart? And the reality is no.
No.
We get worried about things that, we can't necessarily control or really aren't that big of an issue outside of the media,
Well, think about it. It's like,
but that's my own
is that if you were to ask people, hey, how many people do you know have been affected by violent crime from an illegal immigrant or terrorism versus how many people would know somebody that has died from, drug abuse, suicide, struggles with depression,
you're going to find
even cancer and certain other treatments. I mean, it's like, I mean, how many
Exactly.
people?
Everybody knows somebody that's struggling financially, struggling personally, death
Yep.
in the family, suicide, medical illness, something like that.
I literally had a client today that there's cancer treatments that they can get, but they can't afford it, and they're not going to. I mean, literally, what kind of country? I mean, what kind of country do we have where we have people who could get treatment, but they can't afford it, and they're probably going to die or have a high risk of dying? And for what? The people that run those companies are going to have a couple extra Ferraris, a couple extra houses. Yeah. I mean, it's blood money. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand how they live with themselves.
You mentioned TRICARE, and I'm retired. I did 28 years in the military, so I've got TRICARE, and that's what I'm going to carry for the rest of my life. But the cost sharing is just astronomical. I think cost shares have increased like 300%. For us to go to the doctor is $12. For us to go see a specialist, physical therapist, something like that, is a $30 copay. To go to the emergency room is a $60 copay. And the copays on medications have just skyrocketed. But here's the problem, and I'm okay. But you've got soldiers and sailors and airmen and Marines out there that have are on super fixed incomes, and that the extra cost increases being burdened down to them is putting them in financial hardship, and that's just not the way it's supposed to be.
Heck no,
it's just crazy. But you see some of that.
And I do, yeah, and it's just there's so much we have to change, and I think we have to start having more of these discussions because it's something that it all resonates with us. And that's where I think why we do what we do. I think the reason why, I mean, you didn't have to go into radio. I mean, I didn't have to do radio. I mean, my life would be a hell of a lot easier if I just kind of chilled back, saw my clients, did my consulting work, collected my paycheck. My life would be a lot easier. I'd have a lot more time with my family. I'd have less just mental time. I mean, hell, how much time have we spent in the last couple of weeks just figuring out technology so we can talk more? The research, the research. I mean, do you think I like staring at a computer screen and figuring out who to follow and what to write? I mean,
You're right. Doing the research and everything that goes with it.
But why are we doing it? We're doing it because it's going to eat us from the inside.
Important. It's important. It is. People need to hear it. Part of it's cathartic because we get to, share things that we personally feel, but, we also are very passionate about what we talk about, and that's important too. People need to hear this.
Oh, absolutely. And once again, that's why we are doing this. We're doing this because it's something that is actually, we think, going to make a difference, and because we can't ignore it. We can't just kind of act like we're part of the system and just be oblivious to it. So we're trying to make a difference, and it's tough. It's not the easy way around it, but the hope is that, if we found each other across multiple state lines and all aligning from different walks of life, different age groups, different geographical location, different upbringings, that, hey, we all feel the same way. We might view things a little differently, but together, maybe we can all bring our voices together to get people to listen, and maybe other people listen, and then other people listen, and then the people that are in power start to listen, and then maybe that's how we start getting change, because that's how it gets done.
And that's why I'm excited about this weekend. We're going to devote that whole show to bullying. We've got a great guest that was a victim of bullying and had thought about taking her own life. And actually, if I remember the story right, I think she actually attempted it. So we're going to have her, in the studio, and you're going to be, you've got some experience in public research and publication in the past about this. So I'm kind of excited to be talking about that this weekend, and I'm hoping my daughter will come in because she's also the president of the anti-bullying program for her high school. And
awesome!
Be able to share some of her stories too. So
and that's the thing that's really exciting me. I used to sit there and go, man, this next generation is just screwed, right? But the generation that's in high school now, these kids are tenacious. It seems like there was the millennials, as everyone kind of called them, and maybe the Xennials, I think the ones that are slightly after that, they were almost they were frustrated.
Generation Z comes after the millennials.
Yeah, they were frustrated and pissed off and dismayed the way the world was, but they didn't really have the witherall,
Generation
the
Z.
toughness to do anything about it. That's where they're just like, well, fuck it, I'm just going to party and say screw it, and I'm going to bitch and moan about it, right? But the generation of kids that are in high school now, I mean, you saw that with the kids in Florida. Like, some of it might have been a little misguided, and I do think some of it was they were definitely maybe manipulated a little bit by the media, but their heart was in the right place, right? And then they were angry and they organized. And you see, like your daughter's age, I'm seeing these kids are angry, they're organized, they're pissed off, and they're not going to take it. And that's where it gives me hope. I got a 4-year-old at home. I'm like, you know what? I think that I have hope I'm fired. I have hope for the first time in a long time. These kids are smart, they're motivated, and they're not stupid either. They're very even-keeled, even-minded. They're also very realistic, and that's the hope that I have. And that our job is, I think that generation, that we've already got them on our side. It's everybody else, and I think we can do that. And I think there's a lot of other great. I mean, the network that your show is going to be on. I mean, it's about getting a lot of great people together with a different voice. You know, the HC Universal that I'm on. A lot of great shows all talking about getting us to think differently. Like one of the shows, Dudes and Beer, that the owner of the network, really big on just trying to get us to think differently about things. Not telling you what to think, but going, hey, there's another way of looking at it. Think differently about it. Take the evidence and come to your own conclusion, but just don't blindly think something. And that's where I am excited. There's a lot of great content. Podcasting is it right now. And I think, there's a lot of noise out there, and I think it's about making sure that message gets out, and that's where I hope we are getting that out there. And it is about that call to action. So I always end the show off. You've been on the show, you know how we roll. So end of the show is always, all right, we always take everything we've talked about and go, okay, let's take it into salient, tangible actions that we can take today. Not just about 20 years from now or nothing that has any chance of working. So if you're taking everything we learned today, what is one or two things that are salient actions that you and other people you think can take today, tomorrow, to help solve this issue or make it to we're taking steps to help solve it?
Well, I think one of the things that we need to do is just allow people to be able to talk without being judged. And gosh, I'm sounding like an ultra liberal there, but people need to be able to talk about, hey, I'm having a hard time and I'm having these thoughts and I don't know what to do with them, and allow them to be able to open up and and care about what they're saying.
I like that, because I think there's that real compassion. They did like really good research on when you actually see people in front of you, the emotional part of your brain activates more and you feel more emotion, you remember more emotion. But when it's just like on TV or it's distant, you don't. And so I think that whole idea of talking to people, like literally talking, mysteriously you have empathy and mysteriously you care and mysteriously that drives you in the action. So that's a really good one. Any other one that you think would be another good one that you would like to target, or other one that you'd love just to kind of share with people?
No, bullying is something we've got to get our handle on. It's the cyberbullying, bullying through Snapchat, bullying, and this whole depersonalization and everything we're doing through social media, gets into bullying, and bullying increases suicides, and we just need to get our hand around this. But again, we just need to be able to talk, care, respect, and be able to support each other and help each other when we need help.
That's a good one. I love that. So if I had to kind of guess my thing, like what is it that we need to do? I think we need to kind of...
What do you have to do, Mike? Or what is it that we need to do?
I think it's really about we have to kind of see beyond all the crap that the media is trying to get us to look at and realize that it's all self-serving. It's all about serving party rather than country. It's serving self other than serving country. The most patriotic thing to do is to do things that are best for the country. That's why men and women in our armed forces do what they do, is that they believe so strongly what this country stands for that they are willing to die and maim themselves for that. They're willing to leave their families for that. Our people in the media and these politicians, especially the ones that have never served, have no freaking clue what that means. And when they put party and self above what is best for the country, everyone in this country, not just the ones that you like, not just the ones that look like you, not just the ones that have the same bank account or I'm talking all of us. That's what a country is, the United States of America. It's everybody in this damn country. It is a disservice. It is disrespectful for any man or woman that has gave their life for this country or given any sacrifice to the country. So we owe it to everybody to care for everyone and start looking about what is really important. What is really important is what we talked about tonight. We have very big issues in this country with drug addiction, with suicide, with bullying, our society, everything. And we need to start having that discussion. We need to demand to our media people they have this discussion. And you know what you do? If they don't, you stop listening to them. Because guess what? They're doing what they're doing because you're watching. They say it, more people watch, they keep doing it. It's basic reinforcement. If I were to give you $1,000 if every time I punch you in the nuts, guess what? You're going to keep wanting me to punch you in the nuts because I keep giving you $1,000. It's simple reinforcement.
Hey, you know how much the cost of education is?
I do. It is really expensive. And that's where I look at stop watching. Demand they do something different. Watch shows that actually are talking about the issues, because then all of a sudden then more people start watching them, and then more people start listening, and then they start having it, and then all of a sudden people start getting the attention of the politicians going, well, wow, I'm not going to get elected if I don't talk about this. Oh shit, I guess I have to start talking about this. Don't vote for the people that try to pull the wool over our eyes. You want to be a patriot, support the candidate, or go out and find a candidate, support them, help them, be part of some campaign, because that's what it's going to take for change. It is going to be tough. Just like what we're doing, it is tough. It takes sacrifice, but that is the only way it's going to change. And if we bitch and moan about it, whether it be over beers, bitch and moan, but we don't do anything about it, we might as well just not bitch and moan about it. We have to do something about it. So that's my call to action. That's what we need to be doing. We need to continue the discussion. We need to keep going kind of with it. I'm not saying I'm right about everything that I'm talking about, but damn it, you can't deny that there's some big points here. And you can't deny the fact that our attention is radically in the wrong places. So we move forward. We keep trying. We keep hitting it. And that's exactly what we're going to keep doing. So it's a long day. It's a long night. We're going to wrap this bad boy up. So, once again, thank you for everybody for once again tuning in for another amazing episode of Gray Matters Radio. I want to thank my man, Ron, the Opinion Beta veteran, for coming on the show again.
Pleasure to join you.
Always a pleasure, my man. And I want to thank for everybody else.
Likewise.
So, on that note, I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna have a beer. I'm gonna unwind a little bit. Probably gotta take the dog out, and we're gonna continue this on again. We'll be back on the air on Mondays, as always, at 7:00. We'll be talking about autism and the egregious nature of the profiteering of autism treatment in the country. Then on Sunday, always catch us on the Voice of the Radical Center on 1370 AM. And then always catch my show and everyone else in the HC Universal Network. Always great programming. And on that note, I'm out of here. So remember, next time someone asks you, hey, are you Democrat? Are you a Republican? You should say, no, fuck that noise. I'm gray. All right, everybody. You guys take it easy. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Gray Matters Radio with Michael Devine. For more episodes and information, visit us online at graymattersradio.com. Join the conversation by following Gray Matters Radio on Facebook and Twitter. Gray Matters Radio is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more live episodes of this and other great shows, download the free HC Universal Network app at hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, remember, think about the gray.